The fake Aris Gene Shaw has left a suicide note prior to taking her own life. In the note, she claims that I'm the one who killed her in order to make me admit my crime. My parents have sent me to an institution as a human test. I backroad fix. Every day, I'm forced to endure inhuman torture of all sorts. Needless to say, I'm in so much pain that I choose to secretly take some poison in order to kill myself. But my enraged older brother, Sebastian Shaw, saves my life. With bloodshot eyes, he yanks me by the hair while yelling at me. The pain that you've gone through isn't even 1,000th of the pain Jean had endured. You don't have the right to. I can only obey Sebastian numbly. But soon I get sent to the restricted area. There, my belly swells with life, only for me to lose it sometime later. Finally, I've learned my lesson and become docile, no matter what anyone asks. Me, I keep admitting that I'm a vile woman who has killed Jean, my parents. Burst into delighted tears. Sebastian can't wait to have me sent to the court, where I will be sentenced for my crime. He tells me, as long as you admit your crime and go through the punishment, we'll forgive you. I say yes in an obedient manner. I know that my family wants me to be sentenced to death. What they don't know is that I can't live long enough for the death sentence to be carried out. The moment I walked into the courtroom, I heard the entire gallery suck in a sharp breath. It was all because I was dressed and torn, filthy clothes with not a single uninjured patch of skin on my body. Every inch of me was covered in wounds from being abused and humiliated. Mom and Dad saw the way everyone was, pointing at and whispering, their faces twisted with anger and resentment. Didn't we take you to a doctor yesterday to get those injuries treated? And now you're showing up looking like this. Are you trying to make everyone think we're the ones who abused you? You really are vicious to the core, Sonia. The words stabbed into me like knives, but inside, I felt nothing at all. I was their biological daughter. Yet, I had never once measured up to Jean Shaw, the fake Aris. After Jean's death, they taken every ounce of grief and rage they had and dumped it all on me, my brother. Sebastian Shaw's gaze was especially cold when it landed on me. Sonia, what? Are you trying to pull now? Playing the victim again? You think we're going to? Feel sorry for you? You sure didn't. Think about today when you killed Jean. Did you? Mom's tears burst forth like a dam breaking when she heard Jean's name. My darling Jean, why wasn't it you who died instead of her? Sonia. I lowered my head and stared at the wounds on my body, suddenly a little dazed. They still look at me with this much hatred. If I really were dead, would Mom ever bawl for me the way she was now? Probably not. As for Sebastian, he knew better than anyone where all my injuries came from. After all, during my time being locked up in that lab, he was the only one who came by every day, just to watch me being tortured. Yesterday, he'd yanked me up by the hair with a cold laugh and told me to go to court, exactly as I was now. The more people cursed me, the happier it made. And now he'd gotten exactly what he wanted. Closed my eyes and said calmly, "Don't waste any more time. Let's just get this over with." I wanted to end this pain as soon as possible and leave them forever. Right before the judge was about to start the trial, Sebastian suddenly spoke again. "Sonia, remember that you brought all of this on yourself. You're going to accept the verdict, whatever it is." I gazed, knowing exactly what he meant. I was afraid I'd be like before, refusing to admit to any of the charges. He was even more afraid I'd resist when I heard that I'd be sentenced to death, but he had no idea I'd stopped wanting to live. A long time ago, I was dragged to the defendant stand because I hadn't eaten in so long. My legs were so weak, I could barely stand. I had to cling to the rail. In front of me, my ruined knees half collapsing toward the floor. Not a single person in that courtroom felt any sympathy for me. To them, I was nothing more than a murderer. Only Sebastian's gaze was dark, conflicted, and hard to read. After struggling with himself for a long while, he finally told someone to bring over a chair for me to sit on. I paused for a moment and glanced in Sebastian's direction. I was getting chewed out by Mom and Dad. Why did you let her sit down? Do you actually feel sorry for her? Have you forgotten that they still haven't found Jean's body? Sebastian kept his head bowed, not daring to look my way. He said in a low voice, "It's just a chair. If she passes out again, she'll use it as another excuse to escape punishment." That made Mom and Dad shut their mouths, albeit reluctantly. They then turned and shot me another vicious glare. I withdrew my gaze and forced a bitter smile. I didn't notice that my knees were already rotting and mangled beyond recognition. Even sitting down sent a wave of searing pain through me, but honestly, it didn't matter anymore. I decided to treat this as my last bit of familiar affection for him. After this day, all blood ties between us would be thoroughly severed. To guarantee I was telling the truth, the staff hooked me up to a lie detector. Right after that, the judge banged the gavel and the trial began. Sonia Shore, what were you doing on the day the victim, Gene Shore, died? It took me a long time to react before I slowly opened my mouth. That day was both my birthday and Jean's, of course. My parents and Sebastian would never celebrate my birthday. They would only gather around Jean with smiles, acting like I didn't exist. I was long used to it, so I went up to the rooftop alone to quietly enjoy the small cake I bought for myself. That was when everything went wrong. Someone covered my eyes and abducted me. But the time I opened my eyes again, I found myself lying in an abandoned building, my whole body tightly bound. A man in black wearing a mask stood nearby, holding an electric baton and shocking me over and over. The sharp pain tore screams from my throat until I finally passed out. When I came to again, all I saw were my parents and Sebastian's shattered faces. They told me that Jean had been abducted and asked if I knew where she was. My whole body hurt so badly I could barely breathe. I had no idea what they were talking about. Then Sebastian suddenly shouted and found the suicide note Jean had left behind in a bloody corner. Over the past 2 years, I'd rehashed these memories more times than I could count. But my parents and Sebastian never believed me. So right now, I recalled the questions Sebastian had hurled at me back in the lab and answered them loud and clear. I hired someone to create a diversion, then abducted Jean. Did you act alone? Yes. Mom, Dad, and Sebastian instantly grew agitated. I knew it. You're finally admitting the truth. My poor John. If I'd known you were this vicious, I never would have brought you home in the first place. The spectators were furious too. She admitted she's a murderer. Give her the death penalty right now. And she had the nerve to inflict those wounds on herself to win sympathy. She's beyond redemption. I support giving her the death penalty. A storm of curses crashed down on me, but I felt nothing. I just numbly waited for the verdict. The jury muttered among themselves for a while before having the judge asked me one last question. Where did you dispose of Jean Shaw's body? Please note that this is the most critical piece of physical evidence. If you refuse to answer or give a vague response, the trial cannot proceed. Normally, for a moment, every single gaze in the courtroom locked on me. The body, Jean's body. I opened my mouth, desperate to answer right away. However, I broke out in a cold sweat. It felt like someone had picked up a hammer and suddenly started pounding inside, my skull sending a sharp splitting pain through my head. I dropped to my knees while clutching my head. A sharp pain shot through my skull as a flood of images flashed past my eyes. In the haze, a blurry face leaned close to my ear, spitting venom. You deserve this. You killed someone, so you should die. Too. You ruined my entire life. I'll ruin yours as well. I could sense that I was bound and helpless as electric shocks ripped through me again and again. My heart twisted with rage and resentment. Why did I have to go through this? I hadn't done anything. I hadn't hurt anyone. I curled up on the floor, shaking my head over and over. Not even aware of what I was doing? No, I don't. Man, I didn't kill anyone. I swear I didn't. Staff nearby jumped into a panic and rushed over to check on me. After scrambling around for a moment, she pulled me into her arms, pinching my filament as she called for the trail to be paused. The defendant is having a stress response. It shows she suffered inhumane treatment in the past and has serious psychological trauma. If we push on with the hearing like this, it could affect the outcome. Plaintiffs, are you? Sure. You want to continue? She's still your biological daughter after all. Those words cut through the fog in my mind, and I came back to myself. A little. My body kept convulsing uncontrollably as I waited for my parents' answer like it was my last hope. But after a long, heavy silence, they said firmly, "She's faking it. She's just trying to get out of this." No. Matter what trick she pulls, we're going to make her confess and pay today. Otherwise, when will we ever find Jean's body and put her to rest? My heart slowly sank into the abyss, and I silently laughed at myself. At this point, what was I still hoping for? My body started jerking again, probably because the pain buried deep inside finally broke loose. Sebastian's voice strained, but he still said, "Please, wake her up." It precisely because we share the same blood that we can't accept what she's done. The Shore family will never acknowledge a murderer as one of our own. But I didn't kill anyone. Sebastian, why wouldn't any of them believe me? Why couldn't they see the injuries all over my body? Why did they trust the so-called suicide note Jean had left more than they trusted me? Why? Did they never once try to look into what had really happened? Tears streamed from my eyes, and the wounds on my body started bleeding again. Finally, someone in the courtroom couldn't take it anymore. How is this any different from forcing a confession out of her? Setting aside that nothing's been proven yet, even if she really did kill someone, doesn't she at least have the right to receive medical treatment? If this is your flesh and blood, how can you see her like this and feel nothing? Sebastian hunched his shoulders under the weight of those words. He was unable to lift his head, and even more unable to look at me. Mom, on the other hand, rounded on the crowd and screamed at them furiously. Why should I feel sorry for her? Look at all the disasters that have hit this family one after another. Ever since we brought her home, she killed the daughter I raised from birth. And I can't even find the body. I don't know what she went through before she died. And now you want me to waste my time treating this monster's injuries. I refuse to acknowledge this so-called real daughter. Whatever pain Jean went through, I'll make this monster suffer 10 times more. As she spoke, something in her snapped. She bolted out from the plaintiff bench, shoved aside the staff member who was holding me, and slapped me across the face again and again. Wake up. Stop faking it. Where did you hide Jean's body? Answer me, she screeched. The courtroom dissolved into chaos. A few staff members rushed over, frowning, as they tried to drag Mom away. She twisted and fought them, and in the tussle, she drove her kick straight into my body. Why did you have to kill Jean? Sonia? She shrieked. Dad's face was dark as he stepped in front of the staff members, his voice icy when he spoke. My wife lost her mind after our daughter died. Are you still going to defend? Sonia? Only Sebastian saw me cough up a mouthful of dark blood from a hard kick that Mom gave me. He caught Mom's hand. His expression conflicted. Mom, maybe we should stop for today. Sonia really doesn't look so good. Get out of my way. Mom yanked her hand free, her face cold and furious. Sonia may be your sister, but what about Jean? You watched Jean grow up. I know better than anyone what kind of person she was. She didn't so much as her to fly. So why did she have to die? For no apparent reason? It's been 2 whole years. Yet Sonia still refuses to say where Jean's body is. How am I supposed to live with that? Sebastian fell silent and let go of her arm. Just then, the judge on the bench received something. He frowned, then tapped his gavel. Order in the court. In light of the situation, we'll call in medical staff to treat the defendant on site. First, no matter what, the trial has to be conducted while the defendant is conscious. Plaintiff, please return to your seat. In a moment, we'll be using the latest technology to conduct the trial, with Dad and Sebastian pulling her back. Mom was reluctantly forced to sit down under the shield of the law. I finally got a sip of water. Someone started cleaning and dressing my wounds. When the paramedic saw my injuries, she sucked in a sharp breath, her brows knitting together hard. Why does the defendant have so many signs of abuse on her body? These injuries, this is basically torture. What exactly did you people do to her? No one answered her. After all my wounds were tended to, the staff wheeled in a machine and started explaining it to everyone. This device can read a person's memories because it raises serious privacy concerns, and there are some radiation side effects. I need consent from both the plaintiff and the defendant. Let me be clear upfront that the radiation. I agree. Before the judge could finish, Mom raised her hand, her voice ringing through the courtroom. Use it on her. Now, it's just a bit of radiation, and you're going to put her in a protective suit, right? It's not like she's going to die. Sebastian opened his mouth like he wanted to object, but in the end, he just looked over at me. Do you agree to this? I was half collapsed on the floor, my whole body hurting so much I couldn't move. That bit of radiation might very well kill me, but I still nodded. I agree. I could feel my life slipping away bit by bit. At the very least, I wanted to clear my name while I was still conscious. The staff members gave me sympathetic looks, then carefully helped me into the protective suit and guided me into the glass-enclosed chamber at the center of the machine. The machine worded to life, and the judge's voice sounded in my ears. Defendant Sonia Shaw, I'm going to ask you again. On the day the victim, John Shaw, died, you disappeared for a period. Where exactly did you go during that time? Was her death connected to you in any way? I shut my eyes, enduring the searing pain of the radiation as my mind was dragged back to that dark, terrible day. Everyone in the courtroom stared at the images appearing on the screen. From inside the machine, the face that had always been a blur in my own memory finally came into focus for all to see. Sonia, sure you're going to hell for stealing what's mine. When that sentence rang out, my parents and Sebastian stared at the vicious face on the screen, their own faces instantly turning deathly pale. The silence that followed was absolute, heavy enough to crush the air right out of the room. For 2 years, that face had been the golden standard of their lives. Jean's soft, smiling eyes, her perfect porcelain skin, her gentle voice that had always offered comfort. All of it was vaporized in a single flickering second on the giant screen above. The woman on the screen was John, without a doubt, but the face was unrecognizable. Her features were twisted into a snarl of raw, ugly malice, her eyes wide and bloodshot, gleaming with a manic satisfaction that made her look like a stranger. Sonia Shore, you're going to hell for stealing what's mine. The words echoed through the courtroom speakers, crisp and terrifyingly clear. On the plaintiff's bench, my mother's hand remained frozen in midair, still poised, from where she had been screaming at me just moments before, her face drained of all color, turning a sickening, translucent shade of gray. Beside her, my father looked as though he had been struck by lightning. His mouth hung slightly open, his chest frozen, unable to draw a breath. But it was Sebastian whose reaction was the most visceral. He didn't just turn pale, he looked as though his entire soul had been ripped out through his throat. His knees buckled slightly, and he had to grab the edge of the wooden barrier to keep from collapsing. His bloodshot eyes stared at the screen, wider than I had ever seen them, reflecting the harsh blue light of my own extracted memories. Inside the glass chamber, the radiation hummed. It felt like a million tiny, white, hot needles pricking at my skin, digging deep into my bones to pull out the secrets I had buried. My heart hammered against my ribs, a weak, fluttering thing that felt like it could give out at any moment. But I didn't care about pain anymore. I kept my eyes fixed on my family, watching the slow, agonizing realization dawn on them. The memory on the screen didn't stop. It began to play the events of that fateful birthday in agonizing detail. The perspective was mine, looking upward from the cold, damp concrete floor of the abandoned building. My hands were bound tightly behind my back, the rough hemp rope cutting deep into my wrists. Why? Why are you doing this, Jean? My past self whimpered on the recording. My voice was cracked, barely a whisper, trembling with the terror that I had blocked out for so long. I didn't do anything to you. On the screen, Jean stepped closer. She was holding a heavy black electric baton, its tip crackling with blue sparks. She looked down at me, her expression a mix of disgust and pure, unadulterated hatred. Why? Jean laughed, a sharp, grating sound that had none of the sweetness she usually projected. Because you exist, Sonia, because your dirty, pathetic blood is the same as theirs. Do you think I didn't see the way Mom looked at you when you first came back? Do you think I didn't notice Sebastian trying to buy you a book. You're a stray, a street rat, and you think you can just walk in here and take the life. I spent 18 years perfecting? I don't want to take anything. My past self sobbed, flinching as Jean dragged the cold metal tip of the baton down my cheek. I just wanted a family. Well, you're not getting one, Jean. Sneered. I've planned this for months. Sonia, today is our birthday. The perfect day for a tragedy. I've already transferred the funds from the family's secondary account to an offshore register. I've got my passport. Bye. Tomorrow I'll be halfway across the world, living a life of luxury under a new name. She leaned in closer, her breath hot against my memory's ear. But before I go, I'm going to leave them a little parting gift, a suicide note. I'm going to tell them that you drove me to it, that you bullied me, threatened me, and told me I was nothing but a fake who didn't deserve to live. And do you know what the best part is, Sonia? Jean stood up, gesturing to the empty, bloody corner of the room. She had used a small pocket knife to slice her own forearm, smearing the blood against the concrete before wrapping it in a bandage. The best part is, they will believe me. They will believe every single word, because to them, I am their perfect innocent angel. And you are just a strange, quiet girl they brought back from the slums. They will hate you. They will tear you apart with their own hands to avenge me. With a vicious grin, Jean slammed the electric baton into my side. The screen flickered wildly as the memory recorded the sheer, blinding agony of the shock. My past self shrieked, a sound of pure horror that echoed through the courtroom, making several drawers cover their ears in distress. On the screen, the world spun, slipping into darkness as I blacked out, only for Jean to shock me awake again, laughing all the while. In the courtroom, a woman in the gallery burst into loud, hysterical sobs. Oh my God. Someone whispered, she didn't do it. She was the one who was kidnapped. They torture her. They tortured their own daughter for a lie. The whispers began to swell, rising like a tide of condemnation. Every eye in the room shifted from the screen to my parents and Sebastian. The looks of pity and support they had received earlier were entirely gone, replaced by a deep, shuddering disgust. My mother suddenly scrambled forward, her hands clawing at the wooden railing separating the gallery from the court. No, this is a lie, she shrieked, her voice cracking, reaching a pitch of pure desperation. It's a fake. She manipulated the machine. Sonia, how did you do this? How did you hack the court's equipment? Jean would never do that. She loved me. She was my daughter. The technician operating the machine stepped forward, his face pale but completely resolute. Madam, the neural memory extractor reads directly from the deep brain tissue. It is biologically impossible to falsify these images. The biometric lie detector attached to the defendant has remained completely green throughout the entire playback. This is not a simulation. These are her actual, unaltered memories. My father collapsed back into his seat, his eyes hollow. He looked like a man who had suddenly been stripped of his skin, raw and shivering. We did this, he muttered, his voice barely audible over the din of the courtroom. We did this to her, but it was Sebastian who broke first. He didn't. He screamed. He didn't deny it. Instead, he slowly looked down at his own hands, the hands that had dragged me by the hair, the hands that had signed the consent forms to keep me locked in that subterranean laboratory, the hands that had stood by and watched as scientists injected me with experimental chemicals and shocked me to force a confession. "Sonia," he whispered. He took a step toward the glass chamber, his legs shaking so violently he could barely command them. His face was a mask of absolute horror. He looked at me through the glass, his eyes desperately searching mine, begging for something. A sign, a denial, a glitch, anything but tell him this was a nightmare. "Sonia, please tell me it's not true." He choked out, a tear finally spilling over his eyelid, leaving a clean track through the grime on his face. "Please, I watched them hurt you. I told them to do it. I thought I was avenging Jean." I looked back at him. Through the thick, reinforced glass, the radiation was starting to make my vision blur, a dull gray fog creeping in from the edges of my eyes. My chest felt incredibly heavy, each breath requiring a monumental effort, but I didn't blink. I didn't look away. I just stared at him with the same numb, empty expression I had worn for the last 2 years. I didn't hate him. To hate him would require feeling something, and I had emptied myself of feelings a long, long time. Bingo. On the screen, the memory played its final devastating chapter. It showed the moment I finally woke up from the final shock. Jean was gone. The door to the abandoned building was open. A few minutes later, heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway. In my memory, I remembered the sudden spark of hope that had flared in my chest. They found me. I had thought, Mom, Dad, Sebastian, they're here to save me. But the memory showed a different reality. The door burst open. My father and Sebastian rushed in. They didn't look at my bleeding wrists. They didn't see the burn marks on my neck. Sebastian immediately grabbed me by the shoulders, shaking me so hard, my head slammed against the concrete wall behind me. "Where is she?" Sebastian screamed in this memory, his face twisted in fury. "Where is Jean? What did you do to her?" My mother had run to the corner, picking up the bloody envelope Jean had left behind. She didn't even look at me. She just clutched the paper to her chest, wailing. She killed her. Sonia killed my baby. My past self had tried to speak to. Tell them about the masked person, about Jean's words, but my father had backhanded me across the face, silencing me. "Don't you dare lie," he roared in the memory. "You jealous monster. We should have left you in the gutter." The memory faded to black. The courtroom was dead. Silent now. Even my mother had stopped screaming. She had collapsed onto her knees on the floor, her hands covering her face as she wept, not with anger anymore, but with a sudden, suffocating realization of the monstrosity she had committed. Beep, beep, beep. Suddenly, the machine's console began to emit a sharp, rapid alarm. Warning. The computerized voice chimed. Subject's vital signs are dropping rapidly. Cardiovascular distress. Neural load exceeding critical threshold. Immediate termination of the scan is advised. Turn it off. Sebastian screamed, slamming his fists against the glass chamber. Turn it off right now. Get her out of there. The technician scrambled to the console, his hands flying over the keyboard. The system is locked because the subject consented to a deep-level scan. Interrupting at mid-cycle could cause a complete cerebral hemorrhage. I have to bypass the safety protocols manually. Hurry, Sebastian roared, his voice cracking with a desperate panic. He turned to the guard standing nearby. Break the glass. Do something, Sonia. Sonia, look at me. I closed my eyes. The warmth of the radiation was almost comforting now. It felt like a heavy velvet blanket, wrapping around my tired body, shielding me from the coldness of the world. I could hear the shouting, the crying, the panic outside the glass, but it all sounded so distant, like it was happening underwater. I'm so tired. I thought I had spent 2 years waiting for this day, not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted them to crawl on their knees and beg for my forgiveness. I just wanted them to know that they were wrong. I wanted them to know that the daughter they had cherished was the one who destroyed their family, and the daughter they had tortured was the only one who had ever truly wanted to love them. Now they knew. And my job was done. Sonia, no, please. Don't close your eyes. Through the fading light of my consciousness, I felt the glass chamber hiss and slide open. Strong, trembling arms wrapped around my frail, broken body, pulling me out of the machine. It was Sebastian. He was holding me tightly against his chest, his tears hot and wet as they fell onto my bruised cheek. His body was shaking so violently I could hear his teeth chattering. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sonia, please look at me, he sobbed. His voice choked with a pain that I knew would never, ever leave him. We're going to get you help. The best doctors. I'll give you my own blood, my own organs. Anything you need. Just please don't. Don't leave me like this. My parents were there too. My mother tried to reach out, her hand trembling as she touched my ruined leg, but she flinched back, horrified by the texture of the mangled, unhealed skin. My baby, she wept, her voice hollow, stripped of all. It's venom. What did I do to you? What did I do? I slowly opened my eyes. It took all the strength I had left to lift my hand. Sebastian saw the movement and quickly grabbed it, pressing my cold, scarred palm against his cheek. I'm here, Sonia. I'm right here, he spread, trying to force a reassuring smile through his tears. I looked at him, then at my mother, and finally at my father, who stood a few feet back, looking like a ghost. I wanted to tell them that I hated them. I wanted to tell them that I hoped they would burn in the same hell they had built for me. But as I looked at their broken, tear-stained faces, I realized that would be too kind. Hatred was a connection. Hatred meant they still had power over me. So I gathered the very last breath in my lungs and spoke my final words to them. Who are you? I whispered, my voice completely devoid of emotion. Sebastian froze, his eyes widening in horror. Sonia, it's me. It's Sebastian. Your brother, he stammered, his grip on my hand tightening, and Mom and Dad. I shook my head slowly, a tiny, faint movement. I don't have a family. I breathed, my gaze drifting past them, looking up at the high, vaded ceiling of the courtroom where the light was bright and warm. My family died a long time ago. I let go. My hand slipped from Sebastian's grasp, falling limply to my side. The monitor on the machine let out a single, continuous, high-pitched tone, signaling the quiet departure of a soul that had finally found its escape. Behind me, Sebastian's agonizing shriek of despair tore through the room, but I was already too far away to hear it. The trial of Sonia Shore did not end with her death. In fact, it was only the beginning of a storm that would completely incinerate the Shore family legacy. The courtroom footage, along with the extracted memory files, was leaked to the public within hours of the trials. Conclusion. The outrage was unprecedented. The public, who had once stood outside the courthouse demanding. Sonia's execution turned their fury entirely upon the Shore family and the private medical institution that had aided in her torture. The latest technology that was supposed to prove my guilt had instead documented my murder at the hands of my own blood. Within a week, the state prosecutor launched a massive criminal investigation. The private laboratory where I had been held was raided, its records seized, and every scientist and guard involved in my treatments was arrested. But the heaviest hammer fell on my parents and Sebastian. They were charged with kidnapping, illegal detention, human experimentation, and ultimate corporate negligence, leading to wrongful death. The public demanded the maximum penalty. Every company associated with the Shore conglomerate severed ties overnight, driving the family fortune into immediate bankruptcy. But the legal and financial ruin was nothing compared to the psychological prison they had built for themselves. 6 months after my death, Sebastian sat in the dimly lit living room of the Shore mansion. The house was empty now, the servants long gone, this grand furniture covered in dust sheets. The bank was set to foreclose on the property in 3 days, but he didn't care. He hadn't shaved in months. His eyes were sunken, surrounded by dark, hollow circles, staring blankly at a small silver picture frame on the coffee table. It was a photo of me taken shortly after they had first brought me back from the orphanage. I was standing in the garden, looking incredibly awkward, in a dress that was too expensive for me, holding a small flower and looking at the camera with a mixture of hope and fear. He remembered how he had ignored me that day. He remembered how he had walked past me to hand a bouquet of roses to Jean, who had pouted because my presence was ruining her mood. We had you, Sebastian whispered to the empty room, his voice and broken. You were right there. You just wanted us to look at you. The front door opened and his father walked in, once a proud, imposing figure in the business world. The older man now walked with a heavy slouch, his hair completely white, his hands trembling with a permanent tremor brought on by severe anxiety and guilt. The lawyers called, his father said, his voice flat, devoid of any life. The plea deal was rejected. The judge is going to sentence us to the maximum term, 25 years, no parole. Sebastian didn't even blink. Good. Your mother? She's not coming back from the hospital. Sebastian, his father continued, sitting down heavily on a dust-covered sofa. The doctors say the psychological shock has triggered a permanent catatonic state. She just sits by the window holding a baby blanket and calling for Sonia. A bitter, terrible laugh escaped Sebastian's throat. She calls for Sonia. Now, he muttered after she kicked her, until she spit blood, after she slapped her in front of the whole world. Now she wants her daughter, his father buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking as he wept silently. We were blind, Sebastian. We let ourselves be fooled by a monster, and we killed the only innocent thing we had. Sebastian stood up, ignoring his father's tears. He had no pity left for him, nor for himself. He walked out of the house, down the grand driveway, and drove to the cemetery on the outskirts of the city. My grave was located in a quiet, secluded corner, far away from the grand Shore family plot. It was a simple stone, paid for by the state as I had explicitly requested in my final legal directive before entering the courtroom. That day, Sonia Shore, born into darkness, departed into light, beloved by none, beholden to none. Sebastian knelt before the headstone, his knees sinking into the damp earth, He reached out, his trembling fingers tracing the carved letters of my name. I found. Jean, he whispered, a fresh wave of tears spilling down his cheeks. The police tracked her down in Switzerland. She was living under a false name, using our money, laughing at us. She didn't even care that you were dead. She just smiled and asked if we liked her parting gift. He pressed his forehead against the cold stone, his body racking with violent, silent sobs. We arrested her. Sonia. She's going to prison for the rest of her life, but it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't bring you back. It doesn't wash the blood off my hands. He stayed there for hours, weeping into the dirt, begging a silent headstone for a forgiveness he knew he would never receive. But the stone remained cold, and the wind only blew the dead leaves across his bowed shoulders. I was gone, completely and utterly free of them. They had wanted me to pay for a crime I didn't commit, and in the end, they were the ones sentenced to a lifetime of living with the truth of what they had done. Their punishment wasn't death. Their punishment was remembering, and they would remember for the rest of their miserable, empty lives.